Hello, we've got 8-2 digestive system organs and the cavity that they lie within. So here we go. We're going to start out with the fact that most of the organs of your digestive system hang out in your abdominal pelvic cavity. So that would be from your diaphragm down all the way to the tops of your legs. It makes up the peritoneum. The peritoneum, if you remember, is all the membranes that line the abdominal cavity. So there are membranes that line the actual outside of the cavity, but also sit on top of the organs themselves. So if you remember that the peritoneum can be split into two chunks. Chunk number one, the visceral. Remember, visceral means sitting on top of the organ. So these are all the tissues and layers that cover the outside of most of your digestive organs. And then we have two, the parietal, which lines the abdominal pelvic wall. So if you were cutting through someone, it would be skin, muscles in here. Then you would have the parietal peritoneum, and then some space, and then say here's your stomach. Then you would have the visceral peritoneum sitting right on top like that. Okay, so here's a little picture kind of showing this. So, and we colored this. I don't know if you remember this way back when, but we colored something just like this in one of your packets. So here's the peritoneal cavity, which is where all your organs are. Here's your liver. So the parietal peritoneum is what lines the outer cavity, lines the walls. Then we have visceral, which is what lines the organs, like this. Okay? So peritoneal cavity, and then we have the parietal peritoneum on the outside and visceral peritoneum on the inside. So the peritoneal cavity, the space between those two membranes, contains a fluid. If you remember, we call that serous fluid because these are serous membranes. So what that does is to reduce friction, because when you're moving and jumping around, you don't want your intestines rubbing up against the outer layer. So we've got fluids and slippery substances secreted by those membranes, so that way it doesn't rub or stick. Now we do have a special type of membrane in there called the mesentery. And the mesentery, actually I think it might be an E. I need to look that up. Mesentery is a double layer of peritoneum that extends to the organs from the body wall. So if here's your body wall, it goes out, goes around your intestine, back, and then back to the body wall. And so that layer around it right there, see how it's made up of two layers? That would be the mesentery. So it's not directly touching the wall, but it's also not touching the organ. It's just kind of like a rubber band or a ligament that's holding everything together. So that's the mesentery. It extends from the organs to the body wall, and it provides a passageway for blood. So you'll have like your aorta go in and then feed your small intestine. Lymph, nerve vessels. It also helps to hold the organs in place. As you remember with your cat, the intestines don't come out like this. They come out as a block because of the fact that they're all held together by the mesentery. And also it's a great place to store fat, as we saw from the omentum, which was that layer that kind of shielded the small intestine on the outside. It had a lot of fat inside. So let's take a look at a picture. So once again, this is kind of like that other picture I showed you. So here is the parietal peritoneum, anything on the outside. Here's visceral, lining the organs. But if you notice, see how it branches out like this and hangs on to everything? That is the mesentery. Oh, look at that. It is an E, not an A. Sorry about that. So it kind of hangs. So this little intestine isn't just free floating, but it's actually hanging from this root right here. Here's a picture of it. I don't know if this is human or not, but here's your small intestine. Here's the mesentery, and you can see there's blood vessels and nerves that feed all of the small intestine like that. All right, now most of the organs inside of the abdominal pelvic cavity are just kind of floating around inside of the peritoneum. But we have these things called retroperitoneal organs. Retro means backwards, like back in the days. So in this case, it just means backwards. So the pancreas is one of these. The pancreas and parts of the large intestine don't have a mesentery. They're connected directly to the peritoneum. So here's the peritoneum. Instead of going like this, it kind of did a little U-turn, and it's like this. And so there's kind of like a layer that just covers it all, and it just becomes one with the back wall. So we call those retroperitoneal organs because they kind of fused back into the back wall. And then we have intra. Intra means within, So intraperitoneal organs, these are those that keep the mesentery and are physically in the cavity and just dangling by the mesentery. Now you can get infections in there. It's very rare because it's a pretty sterile area, but it is possible, and you get something called peritonitis. So itis, we know, means inflammation of, and then the peritoneal means of the peritoneum. And so inflammation of the peritoneum, lots of pain, lots of just gastrointestinal symptoms that aren't good, and just some standard antibiotics will take care of that. So here is showing an intraperitoneal structure like this, and you can see, you know that because it's got a dangly, it's dangling from the wall, so it's got mesentery. Whereas a retroperitoneal, what happened is it kind of became one with the wall. Here's another way kind of explaining how this happens. This is the back, and this is the ventral, this is the belly. So here's the duodenum, and the pancreas kind of started out like this, but it worked its way over, there was a light, it worked its way over and fused, and so it kind of all became one structure like this. So it appears that it's in the back wall, but it's really not. It's fused with the back wall. So those are called retroperitoneal. Okay, blood supply. What feeds our intestines? Well, anything referring to your intestines is called splanchnic circulation. It's a lovely word, splanchnic. And the splanchnic circulation is anything that feeds the intestines. So these are arteries. You can see here's the aorta right here. And then we have arteries that branch out and feed every bit of the large intestine and every bit of the small intestine. So that is all called splanchnic circulation. Now that's food and oxygen going to the small intestine. So what do you do with the blood that has sucked up all the nutrients? Let me change colors here. That has sucked up all the nutrition and is bringing nutrient-rich blood back. Well, then it goes right here to the hepatic portal circulation. What does hepatic mean but liver? So these are veins. That's why I switched to blue. These are veins that collect all this good, now nutrient-rich blood from your intestines, and it goes to the liver, because what is the liver's main job? To detoxify and to get rid of all the bad stuff. So when you drink alcohol and it goes in here, where's the first place it goes? The liver. And so that's why the liver takes the most damage from alcohol. Here's another picture showing the same thing. And so this is splanchnic, and so that's going this way. And then we have hepatic, which goes back, and as you can see, it goes into the liver like this. So it sucks it from the stomach, large intestine, small intestine, brings it all back to the liver for detoxification. Okay. Now, histology, taking a look at your gut. Your gut is obviously made up of a whole bunch of tubes, but it's not just a single layer tube. So we're going to take a look at the layers of those tubes. So that is called the mucosa. Remember, mucosa is any lining of a wet structure. So inside your nose, inside your mouth, inside your intestines, inside your trachea. So the mucosa is also referred to as the mucous membranes, and this is the inner layer that lines the gut from the mouth to the anus. So it includes the surface of your tongue, your mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, all the way to the booty on the outside. And the mucous membranes in your digestive canal have a couple of different jobs. One is to secrete mucus, because mucus is what helps to protect your stomach from your own enzymes and acids, and also just kind of makes for a smoother transit. Enzymes to digest things, and you even make your hormones out of your stomach and intestines. Now the thing is, you need to be able to absorb the end products of digestion. I need to absorb all those monosaccharides and lipids and amino acids in the water. So the mucous membrane does that. And it also helps to protect against infectious disease. Half of our immune system is in our intestinal system as well. Okay, the mucosa, the mucus layer, has 3 different main layers. And I found this cool little picture I think helps. So this is just a section of like your intestine. So here's, if you kind of picture it going as a big circle. So the mucosa is the lining. So it's the one This is the open space in the middle where the food passes. And so we can say that it's got three main layers. We have the top one, which is the epithelium, and we already know the epithelium lines things, and it makes sense. So we have epithelial, which is made out of simple columnar. Remember, those are the big tall ones like this? Simple columnar, and it's got goblet cells in between, because remember, goblet cells like to make mucus. So we got lots of goblet cells in this outer layer. So goblet, 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 like that. And the mucus that it produces protects your intestinal lining. So we have a nice little layer of mucus like this. Then the next one in is called the lamina propria. The lamina propria is directly under the epithelium, and it's made out of loose areolar tissue, and it has lots of capillaries, lots of blood. So you can imagine blood flowing through here, and also lymphatic tissues to absorb any extra fluid. And then we have the Muscularis Mucosa. So it's the mucous muscles is what that means, and it's just some smooth muscles that line the mucus, the mucosa, and kind of give your intestines some strength behind it. Okay, next one. Again, here's those layers. Well, some of them. Let's see. Here's the epithelium around the outside like that. Okay, and then what do we have next? So it goes epithelium, lamina, and muscularis. So let's see, there's a lamina, so it's kind of like this layer right here, and then the muscularis, which is this layer right here. If you notice, they're not three straight layers, but they're kind of wavy. That makes the villi, which makes your intestines have way bigger surface area for absorption of more materials. Okay, now here's another little picture. So this is all three layers right there. Okay, next one, we have the submucosa. Sub means under the mucosa. Makes sense. So if I go back here for a second, here we are, the submucosa. So under the mucosa. And so this one is made of connective tissue, which makes it very strong. More blood, more lymph, vessels and nerve fibers. And so this is kind of what tells your head you're hungry, or your head tells your body to move things along. Has many elastic fibers as it is able to stretch and contract quite nicely. Okay, and next one we have the Muscularis Externa. I am going to steal some. I like this picture. Hang on one second. I'm going to go steal this. And let's see. Hang on one sec. Pardon me. Copy. I like that picture. It's a good picture. I'm going to stick it here. Paste. And I'm going to go stick it over here. Paste. There we go. I like that. Okay, here we go. So the next one, so we have the, or did I skip a page? No, I got submucosa. Okay. So then the next one is we've got the Muscularis Externa, so the outside muscles. And so we have this one as Muscularis propria, same thing. So this one is responsible for segmentation and peristalsis. So if you notice, it's got two kinds of muscles in it. It's got muscles that go around in circles, and then it got muscles that goes down like this. So by alternating contracting these and these, you can make it get smaller, or you can make it get longer. And kind of like how an earthworm moves by contracting their two muscle types. So we have two different circle layers, or muscles. We have the circular layer and the longitudinal, which is the long one. And by alternating those, that causes food to move down your gut. The really big, strong circular muscles we call sphincters. It just reminds me of Wayne and Garth. A sphincter says what? And so sphincters are just circular muscles that act as valves to prevent food from going backwards, and also just kind of helps food going along in the right direction. Okay, so that's the Muscularis propria or Muscularis externa. So the next one, as we can see coming up, is the Serosa or adventitia, and that's this one. So the Serosa is the outer layer, and that's this green layer right here. So it's a protective outermost layer of, or visceral peritoneum. So this is what's outside the organ itself. Okay, so it's one of the serosa from the beginning. And it's formed with areolar tissue connected with mesothelium, or sometimes a single layer of simple squamous epithelium. So the adventitia is kind of like another name for it, but it's just a fibrous connective tissue that binds to the esophagus and surrounding structures. So this one, the adventitia, is pretty much just in the esophagus, and everything else just has this outer serosa layer. So if we go back to our picture here, serosa or adventitia, depending on if you're an esophagus or not. Okay, and then the last little tidbit has to do with the nervous system control of the GI tract. Enteric refers to just kind of like your intestines, so it's the nervous control of your intestines. You have neurons, enteric neurons, otherwise known as gut neurons, that supply the alimentary canal, and there's two main intrinsic, remember intrinsic is within the organ itself, not from your brain, but from the organ, called nerve plexuses. A plexus is kind of like a group of nerves that are found in the walls of the alimentary canal. We have the submucosal. So what does that mean? Sub, under, mucosal, mucus, nerve plexus. It regulates the activity of glands and smooth muscles in the mucosa. And then we have the mesenteric nerve plexus, which is found between the two layers of smooth muscle. So we have the smooth, round, and the long ones. And it controls how fast your gut moves and how it segments and peristalsis itself. So if we take a look here, here's a section of your small intestine with all those different layers. Here's the serosa, here's the epithelium, the lamina, all that good stuff. So here's the first one, submucosal, and it makes sense because here's the submucosa, so it makes sense this would be the submucosal nerve plexus. And then the other one right here is the mesenteric. Oh, they forgot an S. Mesenteric, which is right here. And so it's just between the two layers of muscles. So these are nerves that are all spawned in the gut, controlled in the gut, takes care of the gut, has nothing to do with your brain. Okay? So I do believe that is it. So next we'll talk about the starting your food's journey through your mouth down to the butt. All right, take care. See you guys tomorrow.